Kate Middleton grimaced. That is the word Prince Harry chose in his memoir Spare to describe the exact moment his sister-in-law reacted when Meghan Markle, backstage at the Royal Foundation Forum, asked to borrow her lip gloss. One simple request, one tube of makeup, and the future Princess of Wales could not hide her visceral reaction to the woman who would become her most complicated relationship. Folks, if a lip gloss could trigger that response in a public setting, imagine what was happening behind palace walls where no cameras could capture the truth. That single awkward exchange was merely the tip of an iceberg, so massive it would eventually sink the entire Fab Four fantasy that the media and the monarchy had so desperately wanted to believe in. Sources close to both women have described the tensions between Kate and Meghan as ferocious, a word that carries weight when applied to two of the most photographed women on the planet. These were not minor disagreements about table settings or schedule conflicts. This was a fundamental clash of two worlds, two ambitions, and two entirely different visions of what it meant to be royal. What makes this story so compelling is not just the petty moments, though there were plenty of those. It is the promise of what could have been. Here were two intelligent, beautiful women, married to brothers, positioned to become the glamorous future of the British monarchy. They had every reason to become allies, to support each other through the relentless scrutiny of royal life, to present a united front against a press that would inevitably try to pit them against each other. Instead, they became the story. They became the rivalry. They became proof that even palaces cannot protect you from personality conflicts. The lip gloss incident, as trivial as it might sound to outsiders, revealed a dynamic that insiders say had been simmering from nearly the beginning. Kate had established herself over a decade as the poised, appropriate future queen. She had earned her place through patience, through careful navigation of royal protocols, through years of waiting for William to propose while the world questioned whether he ever would. And then Meghan arrived like a hurricane, charismatic and confident, famous in her own right, and apparently unbothered by the unwritten rules that Kate had spent years learning to follow. But the backstage tension at that forum was nothing compared to what happened in the weeks and months that followed. What I am about to reveal shows how two women who could have changed the monarchy together instead tore apart one of the most famous families in the world. The fairy tale began, as so many do, with genuine excitement and hope. When Harry first told William and Kate about Meghan, insiders say their jaws literally hit the floor, and not for the reasons you might expect. William and Kate were, as it turns out, huge fans of the television show Suits. They had watched it together, relaxing in front of the screen like any normal couple, completely unaware that one of its stars would soon become family. The idea that Harry had found love with someone they had actually seen on their television was thrilling to them. Kate, in particular, had harbored hopes for years that Harry would find someone special. Sources close to the Princess of Wales say she genuinely wanted her brother-in-law to experience the kind of happiness she had found with William. She envisioned double dates, family holidays, their children growing up together as cousins and playmates. More than that, she hoped for a friend. Royal life can be isolating in ways that ordinary people cannot comprehend, and Kate had spent years navigating that isolation largely on her own. An interesting, accomplished sister-in-law seemed like a blessing. The media immediately seized on the potential. The term Fab Four was born, splashed across magazine covers and newspaper headlines with breathless enthusiasm. Here was the glamorous future of the House of Windsor, young and beautiful and modern, ready to carry the monarchy into a new era. William and Kate provided stability and tradition. Harry and Meghan offered excitement and diversity. Together, they seemed like an unstoppable force for royal relevance in the 21st century. Royal commentators could barely contain their excitement. One described the quartet as the most exciting royal lineup since Diana had transformed the image of the family decades earlier. Another predicted that together, they would generate more positive press than the monarchy had seen in a generation. The palace itself seemed to encourage the narrative, scheduling joint appearances and collaborative charity work designed to showcase their combined star power. But even in those earliest days, there were whispers. One insider who was present during the early meetings between the couples offered a telling observation that would prove prophetic. These are two very, very different people who were never set to be the best of friends. The source was not being cruel, merely realistic. Chemistry cannot be manufactured, even when millions of pounds and the future of a monarchy depend on it. Kate and Meghan smiled for the cameras and said all the right things in public, but behind closed doors, those close to both women could already sense the strain. The warning signs were there for anyone paying close enough attention. The question was whether anyone in the royal machinery was willing to see them before it was too late. Royal experts who have studied both women for years point to one fundamental difference that made friendship nearly impossible from the start. Kate Middleton, they say, never set out to be anyone. She grew up as a middle-class English girl, family-oriented and grounded, who happened to fall in love with a prince at university. Meghan Markle, on the other hand, wanted to be famous. And folks, let me be clear, there is nothing inherently wrong with ambition. But when those two mindsets collide within the pressure cooker of royal expectations, the results can be explosive. Kate's background shaped everything about her approach to royal life. She came from a close-knit family in Berkshire, attended good schools, and met William at St. Andrews when they were both young and relatively carefree. She fell in love at 20, and she stayed devoted through years of waiting, through tabloid speculation, through the relentless questioning of whether she would ever become a princess. Her patience was rewarded, and she brought that same patience to her role within the family. She learned the rules, she followed protocol. She understood that being royal meant sometimes fading into the background while the institution took center stage. Meghan's journey could not have been more different. She grew up in Los Angeles, the daughter of a lighting director and a yoga instructor, surrounded by the machinery of Hollywood. She built her career deliberately, appearing on game shows and bit parts before landing her breakout role on Suits. She understood media in ways that Kate never had to, because for Meghan, media attention was not an unwelcome intrusion, but the very currency of her profession. She had cultivated a lifestyle blog, appeared on chat shows, and built a personal brand long before she ever met Prince Harry. This difference became glaringly apparent whenever the two women appeared together in public. Meghan's public speaking skills and stage presence were undeniable. She had been trained for this, had spent years learning how to command a room, how to deliver a line, how to make every person feel like she was speaking directly to them. Kate, for all her grace and elegance, had never needed those skills. She was comfortable being supportive, being present, being exactly what a future queen consort was expected to be. Sources say this imbalance put noses out of joint in ways that no one had anticipated. It was not just Kate who noticed. William noticed, Harry noticed, the entire royal machinery noticed. Here was a newcomer who, without apparently trying, was outshining people who had been preparing for their roles their entire lives. One insider put it bluntly: Meghan walked into rooms like she owned them, while Kate had spent years learning that royals never own the room, they serve it. The tension this created would explode at one particular public event that changed everything between them. The Royal Foundation Forum in February of 2018 was supposed to be a triumph. Instead, insiders who watched the event unfold say they witnessed in real time the moment the power dynamic between Kate and Meghan shifted visibly on stage, and Kate absolutely felt it. The forum brought together all four royals to discuss their charitable work, seated side by side before cameras and an audience eager to see the Fab Four in action. What they saw instead was a masterclass in contrasting styles that left one woman looking dominant and another looking diminished. Kate arrived at that event already under physical strain. She was pregnant with Prince Louis, dealing with the exhaustion and discomfort that comes with carrying a child while maintaining a public schedule. She was the most senior woman on that stage by marriage, the future queen, the one who had earned her place through years of patient service. And yet, from the moment the questions began, it became clear that Meghan was operating on an entirely different level. Meghan answered questions without hesitation. She spoke with confidence, with passion, with the kind of natural charisma that television teaches you to project. She leaned into the microphone, made eye contact with questioners, and delivered polished responses that sounded both rehearsed and spontaneous at the same time. Kate, by contrast, remained far more guarded. She chose her words carefully, paused before responding, and displayed the caution that royal training had instilled in her. The difference was stark. The audience noticed, the press noticed, and according to sources, Kate noticed most of all. But the real drama had begun backstage, before any of them took their seats. This is where the infamous lip gloss incident occurred. The moment Harry would later describe in his memoir with that devastating word, grimaced. Meghan, preparing for her public appearance, asked to borrow Kate's lip gloss. It was the kind of casual request that women make of each other constantly, a simple gesture of familiarity and friendliness. Kate's reaction suggested that familiar was exactly what she did not want to be. Sources say the atmosphere backstage was already tense before they walked out to face the cameras. Whatever had transpired between them in previous weeks had created a chill that neither woman seemed able to thaw. The lip gloss moment crystallized something. It drew a line. It established that despite what the public might see, these were not friends helping each other get ready for a big event. These were two women occupying the same space while existing in entirely different worlds. But one offhand comment Meghan allegedly made that day about Kate's pregnancy would trigger a confrontation that made the lip gloss incident look like nothing. The words allegedly cut through whatever diplomatic pretense had been maintained up to that point. According to sources, Meghan made a comment about Kate having baby brain, a reference to the mental fog and forgetfulness that some pregnant women experience. And folks, let me tell you, it did not sit well. Not with Kate, not with William, and not with anyone who understood what Kate was actually going through at that time. Context matters here, and the context was brutal. Kate was not experiencing an easy pregnancy. She suffered from hyperemesis gravidarum, a severe form of morning sickness that can be absolutely debilitating. She was dealing with constant nausea, physical exhaustion, and the particular hell of having to maintain public appearances while feeling desperately ill. She was doing her duty despite everything her body was putting her through. To have that struggle reduced to a dismissive quip about baby brain was, according to those close to her, more than she could simply brush aside. What followed was unprecedented in recent royal history. All four royals, William, William, Kate, Harry, and Meghan sat down together for what sources describe as a really heated conversation about the comment and the growing tensions between them. Let that sink in for a moment. These are people trained from birth, or trained extensively after marriage, to never air grievances, to never show discord, to maintain the appearance of family unity at all costs. For them to have convened what was essentially a crisis meeting tells you everything about how serious the situation had become. The conversation reportedly covered more than just the baby brain comment. It addressed the mounting pressures that all four were facing. Meghan was adjusting to royal life, a transition that even those sympathetic to her acknowledge was incredibly difficult. Her father, Thomas Markle, was creating public relations nightmares with staged photographs and interviews that mortified the palace. The wedding was approaching, and with it came scrutiny that would have broken lesser people. Personalities were clashing, expectations were misaligned, and the fairy tale was developing cracks that no amount of media management could completely conceal. Sources say the meeting ended with an uneasy truce rather than a genuine resolution. The fundamental issues remained unaddressed because, frankly, they were unaddressable. You cannot make two incompetent personalities suddenly compatible through conversation. You cannot undo years of different life experiences and expectations with a single difficult discussion. The royals left that room knowing they had to coexist, but having no real blueprint for how to do it peacefully. But this confrontation, as uncomfortable as it was, turned out to be nothing compared to the explosive drama that unfolded in the days immediately before Harry and Meghan's wedding. The story that captured the world's attention claimed Meghan Markle made Kate Middleton cry over bridesmaid dresses. It was repeated endlessly, accepted as fact by millions, and used to paint Meghan as a demanding, difficult bride who had reduced a princess to tears. But when Harry sat down to write his memoir, he revealed a very different version of events. One that he says reflects what actually happened in those chaotic final days before his wedding. According to Harry's account in Spare, it was Kate who made Meghan cry, not the other way around. The dispute centered on the dress for Princess Charlotte, Kate's daughter, who was serving as a flower girl. Kate allegedly demanded that Charlotte's bridesmaid dress be completely remade. She was, in Harry's telling, unwilling to compromise on details that Meghan found unreasonable given the time constraints they were facing. The argument escalated until Meghan was in tears, overwhelmed by a sister-in-law who seemed determined to make an already stressful situation even worse. The timing could not have been more devastating for Meghan. In those final days before her wedding, she was dealing with far more than dress fittings. Her father had become a tabloid spectacle, staging photographs with paparazzi and then reversing his decision to attend the wedding, then reversing again, creating chaos that no bride should have to manage. She was about to marry into one of the most scrutinized families on earth, leaving behind everything she knew, committing to a life that came with rules and restrictions she was only beginning to understand. And in the middle of all this, according to Harry, Kate chose that moment to dig in over a dress. What happened next surprised many who heard Harry's version. Kate arrived afterward with flowers and an apology. She acknowledged, at least through her actions, that she had pushed too hard, that she had crossed a line, that whatever her feelings about Meghan, the days before a wedding were not the time to wage war over hymnlines and fittings. The flowers were, in their own way, an admission, an acknowledgement that she knew she had behaved badly. Sources close to Kate have pushed back on Harry's account, insisting that the situation was far more nuanced than his telling suggests. They argue that Kate was dealing with her own pressures, that Meghan's responses were also problematic, that the truth lies somewhere between the two narratives. But one thing remained constant in all versions of this story. These two women, who should have been supporting each other through a major family event, were instead locked in conflict over details that, in the grand scheme of things, barely mattered. But when Meghan chose to tell her version of this story to Oprah Winfrey in front of 50 million viewers, she made a decision that royals say went far beyond what anyone expected or could forgive. Meghan sat across from Oprah Winfrey, looked directly into the camera, and flipped the script that had defined the bridesmaid dress narrative for years. The reverse happened, she said. Those 3 words, delivered with calm certainty, landed like a bomb in living rooms around the world. She was publicly contradicting a story that had painted her as the villain, and in doing so, she put Kate in an impossible position that the Princess of Wales had no way to escape. Let us be brutally honest about what happened in that moment. Meghan had every right to defend herself. She had been portrayed unfairly in countless articles, had seen her reputation damaged by a story that, according to her husband, was fundamentally untrue. The impulse to set the record straight is understandable, even sympathetic, but the method she chose, the platform she selected, and the way she framed her correction struck many observers as something that crossed a very bright line. Insiders who have worked with the royal family for decades call Meghan's decision harsh, and they have specific reasons for that assessment. Kate had never personally put out the original statement claiming Meghan made her cry. That story had emerged from sources, had been repeated by media, had taken on a life of its own without Kate actively promoting it. For Meghan to respond as though Kate had personally attacked her, when Kate had maintained public silence throughout, struck those close to the princess as unfair. Kate could not respond without violating the never complain, never explain protocol that the royal family has followed for generations. She was trapped, forced to absorb a public accusation without any ability to offer her own defense. The contrast in approaches became impossible to ignore after that interview. William and Kate had spent their entire married lives following the traditional royal playbook. They did not respond to rumors. They did not grant tell-all interviews. They did not air family grievances on international television. Harry and Meghan, meanwhile, had said an awful lot. They had shared private conversations, revealed family tensions, and exposed the inner workings of palace life in ways that previous generations would have found unthinkable. One royal commentator put it this way: Kate made her case through silence and service. Meghan made hers through microphones and media. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong, but they are fundamentally incompatible. You cannot have half a family committed to discretion while the other half treats personal grievances as content. The Oprah interview did not just damage the relationship between Kate and Meghan. It made reconciliation between the brothers seem almost impossible, because William could never forgive what he saw as an attack on his wife. The fallout from that interview would cement battle lines among the royals' closest friends, forcing people who had known both brothers for decades to make impossible choices about where their loyalties lay. Even godparents and childhood friends are now being forced to choose sides, and the choices they are making reveal exactly where the weight of opinion has fallen. The Duke of Westminster's wedding earlier this year became a case study in how thoroughly Harry and Meghan have been frozen out of the circles that once embraced them. Hugh Grosvenor, one of Britain's wealthiest men and godfather to Prince George, invited William to his wedding. Harry, despite being close friends with the Duke for years, did not receive an invitation. Sources say the decision was agonizing, but ultimately straightforward. The Duke could not risk having Meghan at his wedding, not because of personal animosity, but because of a pattern that had become impossible to ignore. One insider explained it bluntly: he could not take the chance that she would make the event about her. That assessment might sound harsh, but it reflects a perception that has taken root among the royal-adjacent social circle. Meghan, in their view, has a tendency to draw attention in ways that overshadow the people and events she attends. The Duke reinforced where his loyalties lie just weeks later by donating £250,000 to one of William's charitable initiatives. Let that number sink in for a moment. This was not a polite check to maintain social appearances. This was £250,000, a statement donation that sent an unmistakable message about which brother the Duke considers worthy of his support. Money talks, and in aristocratic circles, it speaks volumes. This pattern of spotlight stealing that worried the Duke has precedent that many in royal circles have not forgotten. Meghan allegedly announced her pregnancy at Princess Eugenie's wedding, a moment that should have belonged entirely to Eugenie and her new husband. Whether intentional or accidental, the timing transformed what should have been Eugenie's day into a story about Harry and Meghan. Sources close to Eugenie say she was devastated, though she has never spoken publicly about the incident. The cumulative effect of these moments, real or perceived, has reshaped the social landscape around the royals. Friends who once moved easily between both brothers' circles now find themselves having to declare allegiances. Dinner party invitations require careful calculation. Children's birthday parties become exercises in diplomatic navigation. The Fab Four fantasy did not just fail, it fractured a social ecosystem that had functioned for generations. The popularity polls now tell a devastating story about which couple the public has decided to believe, and the numbers are absolutely brutal for Harry and Meghan. 5 years after Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties and began their new life in California, the verdict from the British public has arrived, and it is not the vindication the Sussexes might have hoped for. Poll after poll shows William and Kate's popularity soaring, while Harry and Meghan have become, in the clinical language of pollsters, divisive figures whose approval ratings continue to decline. The numbers are stark. William and Kate consistently rank among the most popular members of the royal family, often trading the top spot with the late Queen's legacy ratings. They have weathered Kate's cancer diagnosis with dignity, maintained their work schedule despite enormous personal challenges, and emerged as the steady center of a monarchy in transition. The public has responded to their approach with genuine affection and respect. Their Christmas card photos go viral for positive reasons. Their public appearances generate goodwill rather than controversy. Harry and Meghan's trajectory tells a very different story. In recent polls, they rank just above Prince Andrew, a man who settled a sexual abuse lawsuit out of court and has been effectively banished from public royal life. Let that comparison sink in. The prince, who was once the most beloved royal of his generation, whose mother's funeral drew millions of genuine mourners, whose wedding attracted a global television audience, now polls barely better than his disgraced uncle. The transformation is almost incomprehensible. The irony that royal watchers cannot stop discussing is the relationship between the Sussexes' public statements and their poll numbers. Every time Harry and Meghan speak publicly, every interview they grant, every documentary they release, their ratings dip further. The Oprah interview that Meghan might have hoped would vindicate her instead alienated millions of viewers who felt she had gone too far. Harry's memoir Spare, despite its commercial success, reinforced perceptions of him as bitter and ungrateful. Their Netflix documentary series, meant to tell their side of the story, struck many viewers as self-absorbed and tone-deaf. Sources say the polling data has not gone unnoticed in Montecito. Harry, according to those who have spoken with him, is acutely aware of how far his standing has fallen in his home country. He sees the numbers, he reads the coverage, he understands, perhaps more clearly than he did when he first left, that the affection the British public once felt for him was not unconditional. It was based on his role within a family and an institution that he has now spent years attacking from afar. The question insiders are asking is whether Harry has finally realized that he is trapped in exactly the situation he tried to escape, bound now not by palace walls but by choices that cannot be undone. The journey from Fab Four hope to irreconcilable rift did not happen overnight. It was a slow accumulation of personality clashes, public betrayals, and fundamental incompatibilities that no amount of royal machinery could resolve. Kate and Meghan were never going to be the sisters-in-law that fairy tales promised. They were two women with different values, different ambitions, and different understandings of what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. The lip gloss grimace was just the beginning. The Oprah interview was not the end. What makes this story so tragic is the waste. Here were two women who, between them, could have accomplished extraordinary things. Kate's steadiness and Meghan's dynamism, properly combined, could have revolutionized royal charity work. Kate's understanding of protocol and Meghan's media savvy could have modernized the monarchy while preserving its essential dignity. Instead, they became symbols of division, proof that even the most privileged positions cannot protect against human conflict. Sources say Harry now understands something that he perhaps should have recognized before he gave up his royal role. His only real value, the only currency he possesses that the world actually wants, is his royal connection. The very thing Meghan allegedly pushed him to abandon, the family and institution he has spent years criticizing, remains the only reason anyone pays attention to him at all. Without the prince title, without the Windsor name, without the association with the British monarchy, Harry is simply another wealthy California resident with opinions about mental health and media intrusion. That realization, according to those who know him, has been devastating. Could Kate and Meghan have ever truly been friends? The evidence suggests the answer is no. They were simply too different, their worldviews too incompatible, their approaches to life too fundamentally opposed. One sought the spotlight while the other served despite it. One viewed silence as weakness while the other understood it as strength. One came from a world where personal narrative was everything, while the other came from a tradition where personal narrative was irrelevant. They were doomed from that first grimace over borrowed lip gloss. The bridges are burned now. The sides are chosen. The polls have rendered their verdict. What remains is a family forever fractured, and two women who might have been allies but instead became cautionary tales about what happens when personalities collide in palaces, where the stakes include crowns, legacies, and the attention of the entire world. Do you think there is any path back for these two women, or has Meghan burned the bridge forever? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.